confident nurse steps into her new workplace, her head held high, unaware that behind sterile walls, prejudice lurks like a disease waiting to infect. Julie McCarthy, a skilled transgender woman, has spent years proving she belongs, but not everyone is ready to accept her. What happens when a doctor lets his bias turn a place of healing into a battleground? Let us know in the comments below. Julie adjusted her hospital ID badge, the familiar weight of it resting against her scrub pocket. Julie McCarthy, RN. Her name felt right, settled, firm. She had fought hard for it, just as she had fought to be recognized for who she was. St. Vincent Medical Center was supposed to be a fresh start, a place where her skills, her knowledge, and her compassion would speak louder than the labels society always seemed to attach to her. But hospitals, for all their talk of science and progress, still held relics of the past, people who refused to move forward. She walked briskly through the bright corridors, her white sneakers making soft squeaks against the polished tile. New job, new city. Same unspoken stares. Some were subtle, flickering glances that darted away when she met them. Others lingered, sizing her up, trying to reconcile what they thought they knew about gender with the confident woman standing before them. It wasn't her first time in a hospital, and it wouldn't be the first time someone made it known they didn't believe she belonged in one. But she had long since decided she wouldn't shrink herself to fit into anyone else's ignorance. "McCarthy, right?" A sharp voice cut through the noise of the hallway. Julie turned toward the sound. Dr. Richard Hale. She recognized him immediately from the hospital's staff website. Clean-cut, sharp-featured, and every bit the image of a seasoned doctor who had spent too many years believing he was untouchable. "Yes, sir," she said smoothly, offering a professional smile. Dr. Hale barely looked at her before turning to the cluster of nurses and residents gathered nearby. "All right, listen up," he announced, not acknowledging her presence beyond the obligatory glance. "This hospital runs on precision. Mistakes cost lives. I don't tolerate incompetence, I don't tolerate laziness, and I don't tolerate distractions." His eyes flicked toward Julie for half a second, just enough to make her stomach tighten. She kept her posture straight. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction. As the group dispersed, one of the other nurses leaned in and whispered, "Welcome to the war zone." Julie exhaled, forcing a small chuckle. Thanks for the warning. It didn't take long to settle into the rhythm of the ER. Organized chaos, people moving like clockwork, lives hanging in the balance with every decision made. This was where she thrived. There was no room for bias when a patient was coding, no space for prejudice when a mother sobbed, but Hale found ways to remind her that not everyone saw it that way. "McCarthy," he called out later that day, waving a chart in the air. "Room 5, suture set up. Think you can handle that?" Julie gave him a measured look. "I can handle a lot more than that, doctor." The other nurses nearby went silent. Hale smirked. "Good to know. Let's see if your work ethic matches your determination." Julie took the chart and turned without another word. Inside the exam room, an older man sat on the edge of the bed, holding a bloody towel against his forearm. "What's the damage?" he asked, wincing slightly. Julie smiled warmly as she pulled on gloves. "Nothing we can't fix." She worked with steady hands, talking him through each step, making sure he felt at ease. This was why she was here. This was what she was good at. Then the door swung open. Dr. Hale strolled in, glancing over her work. "Everything under control, McCarthy?" Julie clenched her jaw but nodded. "Sutures are almost done." Hale leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Interesting technique," he muttered. "Did they teach that at whatever program you attended?" Julie's pulse spiked. The comment was subtle, but she knew exactly what he was doing. The patient's brow furrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" Hale's smirk didn't falter. "Just making sure our staff is up to standard." Julie tightened the last suture and cut the thread. She wasn't going to take the bait. Not here. Not now. She peeled off her gloves and turned to the patient with a calm smile. "You're all set, keep it clean, and you should heal just fine." The patient gave her a grateful nod, then turned to Hale with an unreadable expression. "Didn't realize the standard of care here included undercutting your own staff." Hale stiffened. The silence in the room stretched thick and heavy. Julie met Hale's gaze, a challenge flickering in her eyes. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. But she would let him make the next move, because whatever game he was playing, she wasn't here to lose. The hum of fluorescent lights droned overhead as Julie stepped into the staff lounge, her fingers tightening around the water bottle in her hand. She twisted the cap off with more force than necessary, exhaling slowly. She had been here less than a week, and already she could feel the weight of Dr. Hale's presence pressing against her like a persistent shadow. She had encountered men like him before, men who saw her transition as something to question, a curiosity at best, an inconvenience at worst. It never mattered how many years of nursing school she had under her belt, how many patients she had saved from spiraling into septic shock, or how steady her hands were when stitching a wound. Some people only saw what they wanted to see. The lounge door creaked open. A nurse she had seen in passing, a young woman with blonde hair tied in a tight bun, stepped inside and grabbed a granola bar from the counter. She hesitated before speaking. "Hey," she said, her voice quieter than the usual noise of the hospital halls. "That was brutal back there. Hale does that a lot." Julie let out a dry laugh, setting her water bottle down. "Yeah, I picked up on that." The nurse peeled back the wrapper, keeping her eyes down. "He's old school, the kind that doesn't like things he doesn't understand." Julie leaned against the counter, studying her. "And what is it exactly that he doesn't understand?" The nurse finally met her gaze. "You know." Julie crossed her arms. "You can say it." The woman sighed, lowering her voice. "He doesn't like that you're trans. He doesn't say it outright, but it's clear. The little jabs, the dismissive attitude. He does it to anyone who doesn't fit his narrow definition of how things should be." Julie had spent years building up a resistance to these kinds of words, but they still landed like a dull punch to the gut. She had fought too hard for her identity to let someone like Hale shake her. She smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "Well, he's going to have to get used to me, because I'm not going anywhere." The nurse nodded, a flicker of something like respect in her eyes. "I'm Kara, by the way." Julie extended a hand, and Kara shook it firmly. Just as they exchanged the brief moment of solidarity, the intercom crackled overhead. "Code Blue ICU, Code Blue ICU." Julie and Kara were already moving before the announcement ended. They burst into the ICU, where a team of nurses and doctors swarmed around a frail-looking patient in his 60s, his body convulsing, the monitor blaring its warning of a crashing heartbeat. Julie barely had time to register Hale's presence at the head of the bed before she jumped into action, grabbing the intubation kit, pushing through the controlled chaos to assist. "Airways compromised," one of the residents called out. Julie moved fast, positioning herself to assist with the intubation. She had done this countless times before. The moment she opened the tray and began setting up the necessary tools, she heard Hale's voice, sharp and cutting. "McCarthy, step back. Let someone else handle this." Julie froze, her hands tightening around the laryngoscope. She looked up, meeting Hale's gaze. His expression was unreadable, but the message was clear. "Not you, not here." The room was still moving around her, nurses calling out vitals, a resident preparing the defibrillator. But in that moment, it felt like everything had slowed. She could have stepped back. She could have let him win. But she wasn't going to. With careful precision, she inserted the blade, visualized the vocal cords, and passed the tube through. Her hands were steady, her breath even. Only when the machine registered proper airflow did she step back. One of the attending physicians gave her an approving nod. "Good work, McCarthy." Hale said nothing. He simply turned and muttered, "Let's move." The team continued working, but Julie had already seen it. the tightening of his jaw, the way his fingers twitched at his sides. She had done what he thought she couldn't. The patient stabilized. The tension in the room dissipated, and yet as they filed out, Julie knew that this wasn't over. She had won this round, but Hale wasn't the kind of man who let things go. Back in the hallway, Kara nudged her arm. "That was impressive." Julie huffed out a short laugh. "Yeah? Tell that to Hale." Kara's expression darkened. "He's not going to like that you showed him up." Julie shrugged. "I don't care what he likes." But the truth was, she did care. Not because she needed his approval, but because men like him held power, and she had spent too much of her life being told she didn't belong. She wasn't about to let it happen again. She didn't come to St. Vincent to be tolerated. She came to be respected. Julie scrubbed her hands at the sink, the warm water running over her fingers, but it did little to rinse away the weight pressing down on her. The ICU emergency earlier had only solidified what she already knew. Dr. Richard Hale had a problem with her. She had worked under plenty of doctors, dealt with arrogant surgeons, dismissive attendings, and nurses who doubted her competence, but there was something different about Hale. He wasn't just cold. He was deliberate. He wanted her gone. The bathroom doors swung open and Kara stepped in, arms crossed. "So, are you ready for round 2? Julie turned off the faucet and grabbed a paper towel. "What do you mean?" Kara tilted her head toward the hallway. "Hale's on a warpath. Word is he's been talking to some of the other doctors about you." Julie exhaled sharply. "Great. Let me guess. Questioning my skills? Saying I don't belong?" Kara frowned. "Worse. He's making it about your credibility." Julie's stomach clenched, but she forced herself to stay composed. She had heard the whispers before, the muttered questions behind her back. "Do you think she's really qualified?" "I don't know if I'd be comfortable with that. It's just weird, you know." All said with the same feigned concern, the same coded language that people used when they didn't want to sound outright hateful, but the meaning was always clear. Julie balled up the paper towel and tossed it into the trash. "What else did you hear?" Kara hesitated. "He mentioned patience, saying that some might not feel comfortable being treated by you." The words hit harder than she expected, not because they surprised her, but because she knew how dangerous that kind of rhetoric was. It wasn't about whether or not a patient actually had an issue with her. It was about planting the seed of doubt. Julie straightened her back. "I need to get back to work." Kara studied her for a moment before nodding. "Just be careful." Julie didn't have time to be careful. She had rounds to do. The moment she stepped onto the hospital floor, she felt the shift in energy. Nurses exchanged glances as she walked past, their conversations quieter than usual. A few of the newer residents avoided eye contact. Hale was getting to them. She gritted her teeth, grabbed the nearest patient chart, and focused on what mattered. Her job. Her first stop was room 214. The patient was a young woman, barely in her 30s, admitted for complications from diabetes. She was seated upright, scrolling through her phone when Julie entered. "Miss Delgado?" Julie said with a polite smile. The woman looked up, her eyes flickering across Julie's ID badge before settling on her face. "Oh, hi." Julie moved to check the IV drip. "How are you feeling today?" The woman hesitated, then shifted uncomfortably. I think I'm okay, but I was wondering if maybe I could have a different nurse." Julie froze. She forced herself to keep her expression neutral. "Is there something I did to make you uncomfortable?" The woman looked down at her hands. No, it's not that. It's just I heard some things, and I don't know. I don't want any problems." Julie clenched the clipboard in her hands, her pulse throbbing in her ears. She knew exactly where this was coming from. Dr. Hale had gotten inside the patients' heads. She inhaled deeply, steadying her voice. "Mrs. Delgado, I assure you my only goal is to take care of you. That's all I've ever wanted to do. If you still feel uncomfortable, I can ask another nurse to step in, but I'd like the chance to prove that I can give you the best care possible." The woman hesitated. Finally, she exhaled and gave a small nod. "Okay." Julie forced a small smile and continued with her work. One patient at a time. One battle at a time. By the time she finished her rounds, she was exhausted. But the day wasn't over yet. As she turned the corner, she saw him. Dr. Hale stood near the nurse's station, speaking in hushed tones with another physician. The moment Julie approached, they stopped talking. She didn't wait for an invitation. She stepped up, folded her arms, and spoke clearly. "Dr. Hale, can I have a word?" His lips curved into a knowing smirk. "Of course, McCarthy." Julie glanced at the other doctor, who quickly excused himself. Now it was just the two of them. She kept her voice even. "I hear you've been discussing my credibility with other staff." Hale sighed dramatically. "McCarthy, I don't know what you've been told, but as your superior, it's my responsibility to make sure every nurse here is fit for their position. That includes evaluating how patients feel about their caregivers." Julie clenched her fists. "You're not evaluating anything. You're spreading doubt. You're making it harder for me to do my job." Hale leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "I don't make the rules, McCarthy. Patients have the right to feel comfortable. Some people are resistant to certain changes. You can't blame them for that." Julie's jaw tightened. "I'm not a change. I'm a person, a nurse, and if I'm here, it's because I'm qualified." Hale chuckled. "Oh, I don't doubt you passed your exams, but there's more to this field than technical skills. There's trust. And trust, McCarthy, is something you don't just get handed. You have to earn it." Julie stared at him, her fingers twitching at her sides. She had earned everything. But to people like Hale, it would never be enough. She took a slow breath. "I've worked too hard to let someone like you push me out. I know what you're doing, and I won't stand for it." Hale's smirk widened. "Well, that's adorable." Julie refused to look away. She wasn't going anywhere. And for the first time, she saw something flicker in his expression. Annoyance. She was still standing, and that was what frustrated him the most. This fight wasn't over. Not even close. Julie sat alone in the lounge, staring at the vending machine without really seeing it. The bright neon numbers on the keypad blurred together, her mind still stuck on the confrontation with Dr. Hale. She had dealt with men like him before. It was nothing new, but the way he spoke, so casual, so smug, made her skin crawl. He wasn't just trying to make her uncomfortable. He wanted her to fail. He wanted her gone. She exhaled, pressing her fingers against her temple. No. She wouldn't let him win. The door swung open, and Kara walked in, her eyes scanning the room before landing on Julie. She grabbed a bag of chips from the counter and sat beside her. "So what did he say?" Julie sighed. "Exactly what you'd expect, that patients have the right to feel comfortable, that I have to earn their trust." Kara rolled her eyes. "That's just his way of justifying his own bias." Julie nodded. "I know." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound in the room was the distant beep of machines from the hallway. Then Kara hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" Julie turned to her. "Sure. Do you ever get tired of it?" Julie tilted her head. "The fight," Kara clarified. "The constant need to prove yourself, the people who look at you like you don't belong. Doesn't it just wear you down?" Julie thought about it. Did it wear her down? Every day she had to prove herself twice over, once as a nurse and again as a transgender woman. She had to walk into rooms knowing that some patients, some coworkers, some doctors were waiting for her to slip up, to make a mistake, to confirm whatever assumptions they had about her. She had to be twice as careful, twice as competent, twice as perfect. But what was the alternative? She turned to Kara. Yeah, I get tired of it. But I also know I don't have a choice. Kara chewed on her lip. I don't think I'd be strong enough for that. Julie shook her head. You would be. When it's your life, you don't get to pick and choose when to be strong. Kara gave a small, sad smile. I guess not. Before Julie could respond, the intercom crackled overhead. McCarthy to room 306. McCarthy to room 306. Julie stood immediately, heart already racing. That's the VIP suite. Kara raised an eyebrow. The new patient? Julie nodded. The moment she had heard about the hospital's latest arrival, a wealthy, high-profile figure in the healthcare industry, she had known the entire hospital would be on edge. She hurried down the hallway, her shoes tapping against the tile. When she reached room 306, she knocked twice before pushing the door open. The man in the hospital bed looked up, his sharp blue eyes locking onto hers. Jonathan Carter. Julie knew the name. Everyone in the industry did. The CEO of one of the largest healthcare conglomerates in the country. A man who had the power to make or break hospitals with a single decision. He was in his early 50s, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed despite the hospital setting. His posture was relaxed, but there was something in his gaze that told Julie he was already assessing her. She stepped inside, keeping her voice professional. Mr. Carter, I'm Julie McCarthy, your assigned nurse. He studied her for a moment before nodding. Nice to meet you, Julie. There was no hesitation in his voice, no flicker of surprise or discomfort when he read her name badge. She relaxed slightly. How are you feeling? Carter sighed, shifting slightly in the bed, like a man who spent too much time in meetings and not enough taking care of himself. But I suppose that's what brought me here. Julie allowed herself a small smile. That, and dangerously high blood pressure. Carter smirked. That too. She checked his chart, ensuring everything was in order. I'll be monitoring you closely while you're here. If you feel any discomfort, dizziness, or chest pain, let me know immediately. Julie noted. Just as she finished adjusting his IV, the door swung open. Dr. Hale. Julie felt her entire body tense. Hale stepped inside, his usual air of authority practically suffocating the room. But as soon as he saw Carter, his demeanor shifted. Mr. Carter, Hale said smoothly, flashing his most charming smile. It's an honor to have you at St. Vincent. Carter didn't return the smile. He simply nodded. Dr. Hale. Hale turned toward Julie, his expression shifting back to its usual condescension. McCarthy, I'll take over from here. Julie didn't move. Carter glanced between them, his brows slightly furrowing. Actually, I'd prefer if Julie stayed. Hale stiffened. I don't think that's necessary. I can... Carter's voice was calm but firm. I said I'd prefer if she stayed. Hale's lips pressed into a thin line. Julie's pulse quickened. Something was off. Carter had barely met her, but there was an edge to his voice, an underlying tension that made her wonder. Did he know? Hale cleared his throat. Of course. I'll leave you in her care then. He turned sharply, his movements stiff as he walked out the door. Julie exhaled, still standing straight, but her entire body buzzing. Carter watched Hale leave before turning back to Julie. He doesn't like you much, does he?
Julia let out a small, humorless laugh. Not particularly. Carter tilted his head. Because you're good at your job, or because you make him uncomfortable? Julie hesitated. The way he said it, because you make him uncomfortable, was knowing. She met his gaze. Both. Carter nodded, a flicker of something unreadable in his expression. Then, finally, he smirked. Good. Julie frowned. Good? Carter leaned back against the pillows. People like him, they need to be uncomfortable. She didn't know what to say to that. But something told her that whatever had just happened in that room, It wasn't the last of it.
Julie could feel the shift before she even stepped onto the floor the next morning. The air was different, quieter but charged, like the tension right before a storm. As she walked past the nurse's station, heads turned, conversations faltered, and the usual morning shuffle seemed more subdued. Something had happened. Kara intercepted her before she could reach the locker room. "You heard?" Julie frowned. "Heard what?" Kara's eyes darted around, then she lowered her voice. "Hale's in a meeting with the hospital board." "With Carter?" Julie blinked. Kara continued, whispering quickly. "Word is, Carter isn't happy. He's been asking questions about the way this place is run, about the staff, about certain people." Julie stiffened. She didn't need Kara to say it out loud. Carter was asking about her. She exhaled, steadying herself. "I need to get to work." Kara nodded, but before she left she murmured, "Be ready for whatever comes next." Julie wasn't sure what that meant, but she knew one thing. She wasn't going to let fear take hold. She did what she always did. She put on her scrubs, grabbed her clipboard, and went straight to her patients. But the weight of uncertainty followed her. By mid-morning, as she finished checking vitals in room 217, the intercom crackled overhead. "Nurse McCarthy to the director's office. Nurse McCarthy to the director's office." Julie swallowed hard. This was it. She took measured steps through the hallway, her fingers tightening around the clipboard she no longer needed. The moment she reached the door, she knocked once, then pushed it open. Inside, Dr. Hale sat stiffly in a chair against the far wall, his expression unreadable. Across from him, leaning back casually, was Jonathan Carter. And standing behind the desk, hands folded in front of him, was Dr. Patel, the hospital director. Julie stepped inside, shutting the door behind her. Dr. Patel gestured to the seat beside Hale. "Have a seat, Nurse McCarthy." She didn't move immediately. Instead, she looked directly at Carter. He gave her the slightest nod. That alone made her decision. She wasn't going to sit down. "I'll stand, thanks." Dr. Patel hesitated, then nodded. "Suit yourself." There was a pause before Carter spoke. His voice was smooth but firm. "I asked for this meeting." Julie stayed silent, her heart beat loud in her ears. Carter's eyes flicked toward Hale before settling back on Patel. "I've been in this hospital for less than 48 hours, and already I've seen enough to know there's a serious problem with how it operates." Patel cleared his throat. "If this is about any—" Carter cut him off. "I'm not talking about budget cuts or scheduling issues. I'm talking about discrimination." The word landed like a gunshot in the room. Hale's jaw tensed, but he said nothing. Carter continued, his voice calm but unyielding. "It's come to my attention that one of your most capable nurses has been repeatedly undermined, questioned, and targeted, not because of her skills, but because of who she is." Julie inhaled sharply. Carter turned to Patel. "Tell me, doctor, do you run your hospital like this? Do you allow senior staff to create an environment where employees are afraid to do their jobs?" Patel stammered, shifting uncomfortably. "Mr. Carter, I assure you, St. Vincent values all of its employees." "Does it?" Carter asked, tilting his head. "Because from where I'm sitting, I'm not seeing it." The silence was suffocating. Then, finally, Hale spoke. "This is ridiculous." His voice was low but seething. "With all due respect, Mr. Carter, this is a medical institution, not a social experiment. There are standards, expectations. If some individuals find it harder to integrate, that's not my fault." Julie clenched her fists. Carter's expression didn't change. "You mean people like Julie?" Hale scoffed. "If you want to phrase it that way." Carter leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "Here's the thing, Dr. Hale. I don't run my company like this. When I invest in something, I make damn sure that it operates with excellence, integrity, and inclusivity. And as of today, I'm investing in St. Vincent." Patel's head snapped up. "I'm offering a substantial financial partnership," Carter confirmed. "And with that, I'm demanding changes. Hall's face darkened. You can't just... I can. Carter's voice was steel, and I will. Julie didn't know what to feel. She had spent so much of her life fighting alone. Now, for the first time, someone wasn't just standing beside her, they were standing for her. Carter stood, buttoning his suit jacket. Dr. Hale, you have a choice. You can adapt and learn, or you can find the door. Hale looked at Patel, then back at Carter, his lips pressed into a thin, furious line. Unbelievable, he muttered under his breath. This place is a joke. Julie watched as he stood, straightened his coat, and turned toward Patel. I'll be submitting my resignation by the end of the day. He didn't look at Julie as he stormed out of the office. The room was still. Then Carter turned to Julie, his expression softer now. You okay? She exhaled. I don't know. Carter nodded as if he understood. Well, you should be. You won. Julie looked at Patel, who was still reeling from what had just happened. I trust there won't be any further issues with Nurse McCarthy, Carter asked Patel, though his tone made it clear it wasn't a question. Patel shook his head. Of course not. Julie let out a slow breath. She hadn't expected any of this. Carter moved toward the door, then paused and glanced back. Oh, one more thing. Patel straightened. Yes? Carter smiled. Effective immediately, I want to implement a diversity and inclusion leadership role. Someone who can ensure that the culture of this hospital actually matches the values it claims to uphold. Patel hesitated. Who would you suggest for that role? Carter's eyes flicked to Julie. I think we both know the answer to that. Julie's stomach flipped. Patel turned to her, as if only now realizing what Carter was saying. Nurse McCarthy? Julie's lips parted, but no words came. Carter smirked. Think about it. You've been fighting this battle long enough. Then he walked out, leaving the air thick with change. Julie sat down, her legs suddenly weak. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't just surviving. She was winning. Julie sat in the nearly empty break room, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold a while ago. The past 24 hours had been a whirlwind, and yet she still felt like she was waiting for something to crash down around her. Hale was gone, just like that. She should have felt victorious, but all she could think about was how much energy it had taken to get here, to simply exist in her own workplace without someone trying to push her out. The door swung open, and Kara stepped inside, plopping into the chair across from her. You look like you just ran a marathon, Kara said. Julie let out a small laugh. Feels like I did? Kara smirked. Well, I hope you have some energy left, because you're kind of a big deal now. Julie raised an eyebrow. The diversity position, Kara prompted. Are you going to take it? Julie stared at her coffee, swirling the liquid absently. The idea had been sitting in the back of her mind all day. A leadership role, a seat at the table, instead of always fighting from the outside. But with it came responsibility, visibility. It was one thing to fight her own battles. It was another to step into a role where she would be the voice for change. I don't know, Julie admitted. Kara studied her, then tilted her head. Do you want to hear what I think? Julie smirked. Something tells me you're going to tell me either way. Kara grinned. Damn right, I think you've been leading this place long before anyone gave you a title. Julie's smile faded slightly. You think this job is about pushing paper and writing memos? Kara continued. No, it's about being here. Existing, taking up space, refusing to let anyone push you into the shadows. It's about making sure no one else goes through what you did. Julie swallowed the lump in her throat. Kara softened. You've already been doing the work, Jules. You might as well get the office for it. Julie exhaled. She had spent so much of her life proving that she deserved to be in the room. Now, for the first time, someone was offering her a place at the table. And maybe, just maybe, she was ready to take it. She set down her coffee and stood. "Come on, we've got patients to take care of." Kara grinned. "That's the Julie I know." They stepped back into the hallway, and for the first time in a long time, Julie didn't feel like she was walking into battle. The next few days were filled with a different kind of movement, change. Conversations that had once been whispered were now spoken openly. Nurses who had been afraid to speak up were starting to push back against outdated policies. The culture of the hospital was shifting, and Julie could feel it. It was a slow process, but for the first time she wasn't alone in it. And then, on Friday afternoon, she found herself outside Patel's office, taking a deep breath before stepping inside. Dr. Patel glanced up from his desk, surprised. "Nurse McCarthy?" Julie nodded. "I've made my decision." Patel set his pen down, giving her his full attention. "Go on." She inhaled deeply. "I'll take the position, but on my terms." Patel leaned forward. "And what are your terms?" Julie's heartbeat was steady. "I don't want to be a symbol," she said firmly. "I don't want a title that makes this hospital look good on paper while nothing actually changes. If I take this, I'm going to make real changes. That means training programs, accountability, actual policy shifts. I won't be a figurehead." Patel was silent for a moment, then nodded. "I wouldn't expect anything less from you." Julie raised an eyebrow. "You sure? Because I'm not going to be polite about it." Patel chuckled. "Somehow, I think that's exactly what this hospital needs." A slow smile crept across Julie's face. For the first time, she wasn't just fighting to exist. She was building something. The hospital needed her, and she belonged here. A week later, as Julie stepped onto the floor, something felt different. Maybe it was the way people greeted her, with genuine respect instead of obligation. Maybe it was the way Kara high-fived her at the nurses' station. Maybe it was the way she finally felt like she wasn't just tolerated, but wanted. She had spent so much of her life fighting for a place in the world. And now, she was creating one,